Good afternoon. My name is Karen Jernigan. It's Tuesday, November the 26th, 2019, and we are here in Dorado Hills, California, to have a conversation with David Tavernetti about his knowledge of King City, the town where he was raised, and for several years served as mayor. We are doing this on behalf of the San Antonio Valley Historical Association. So first, I'm going to ask David to state and spell his full name for the record. Okay.
David Tavernetti. And my date of birth?
Yes.
February 20, 1940.
Okay, so and it's David, D-A-V-I-D, and you have a middle name?
Ellis.
Ah. Is that after your father?
Yes.
And then Tavernetti, T-A-V-E-R-N-E-T-T-I.
Yes.
Okay. And I want to make sure we have permission to use this recording to educate people about history. So, David, do we have your permission to share this information with others who are interested in history?
Yes.
Thank you. We are conducting this interview at 7021 Timber Trail Loop in El Dorado Hills, east of Sacramento. In the room with us is videographer John Jernigan, and we look forward to learning from David what he remembers about King City. So, date of birth, February 20th, 1940, and where were you born?
Park Lane Hospital in Salinas.
And then you came home to King City?
Yes.
Okay. And where were your parents living at that time?
On Lynn Street.
Okay. On Lynn Street. Okay. So let's just do kind of a general timeline. You're born in 1940, so that was right before World War II.
Correct.
And then you went to school in King City for 17 years, and then went off to the service or to college.
Yeah, but actually 8 and 4 is 12.
Okay, so you did
8 elementary and 4 high school.
okay, and then you did some preschool there, or you were before you went into school then.
Not
Yeah.
really.
Not really. Well, you were 17 when you graduated from high school?
Yes.
Okay. And then you went off to college?
Yes.
Okay. And then you went to the service?
Yes.
Okay. And then back to King City?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's go back to way back. How your parents and grandparents ended up in the Salinas Valley. So who was the first to come to the Salinas Valley?
My great-grandfather.
Okay, and what was his name?
Vincent Tavernetti.
Vincent Tavernetti. And he came from where?
Mageno in Ticino in Switzerland.
And what brought him to the Salinas Valley?
A lot of the Swiss that came to the Salinas Valley in the 1870s, 80s, came because there was work in the fields, in the farming, the dairies, and there wasn't that much work in Switzerland at the time. And so 1 or 2 came over and wrote back and said, you know, this is good and we've got work and stuff. So then more followed. That's why, it's diluted now, but why there were so many Swiss in the Salinas Valley.
So, did your great-grandfather have relatives or cousins or just friends that were living here? Do you know that story?
It would be friends.
Friends.
I don't know of any relatives, but truthfully, there could have been, you know. A lot of them came from Valmaja in Switzerland, and how they were intermarried or related, I don't know.
And do you know what area of the Salinas Valley they came to?
Directly across from Soledad Prison, my family.
Okay.
Some came south to Greenfield area. Some stayed out in the Mission District.
So Vincent Tavernetti, when he came here, your great-grandfather, was he married, or did he meet somebody when he came here?
I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I have a feeling he was married, but that's just a feeling. That subject never came up.
Okay, and then he had children?
Yes.
And what were their names?
I can't tell you.
Were there many of them?
About 9.
Wow.
That's,
Okay.
That's an about figure.
Uh-huh. But your grandfather, what was his name?
Paul.
Paul Tavernetti. Okay. And did he continue on in the line of work that you're with your great-grandfather in farming?
Yes,
Okay.
initially.
Mm-hmm. And so then it was Paul that ended up being the father of your father.
Correct.
Is that right? And your father's name was?
Ellis.
Ellis. Okay. And then he had a brother,
Leroy.
Leroy. Were there just 2 of them, or were there
Yes,
more?
just
Okay.
the 2.
Okay. So at what point did your father come to King City?
They came to King City. They had decided to come to King City, but were waiting for me to show up. So the story I was told is that when I left the hospital, I came straight to King City.
And so your dad by then had married your mom. What was her name?
Helen
Helen. And what was her maiden name?
Hoag, H-O-A-G.
Okay. So what brought your father and mother to King City?
He went to work with his first cousin in a real estate and insurance business.
And his first cousin was?
Jim Pettit.
Jim Pettit.
That's 4 T's.
With 4 T's. And so he was selling real estate and insurance?
Primarily insurance.
Selling insurance, okay. And so you came home from the hospital to live on Lynn Street. What are your earliest memories of King City?
Growing up on Lynn Street, that was the neighborhood. Until I started school, I don't have a lot of, memories. I remember the house, the layout of the house. I remember the blackouts
Oh,
during World War II.
okay.
When you put a single light or a candle on the table. I remember when the war ended.
And why do you remember it? Was there celebrating or?
Oh, the sirens were going off. My mother and brother and I walked up to Broadway, about to where the laundry dry cleaners were, and the fire truck was going, and everything was just exciting.
Do you remember some of your neighbors on Lynn Street?
Yes. The Daniels family lived next to us. Bill Culver was on the right, and then the Schmidt family, and then a couple more houses down was Ken Mansfield. Across the street direct from us was the Sylvester family, and then 2 houses west of them was Gene Rianda, and next to him was Mrs. Zolan, who I believe was a teacher. That's about it.
So it sounds like you were on the 500 block of Lynn Street.
Yes.
Yeah. There was you, and you had a brother.
Yes.
And how old was your brother? Older or younger than you?
Younger.
Okay. And what's his name?
Leonard.
Okay. How many years younger than you?
16 months.
Oh, so pretty close. Yeah. Okay. And do you have memories of your school years going to school in King City?
Elementary school?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which school did you go to?
San Lorenzo. There wasn't a choice.
There's about 4 schools now, but then there was only one.
Yes.
San Lorenzo on Pearl Street, right?
K through 8, and A and B for both grades. And it was mostly alphabetical.
So what do you mean by A and B for both grades?
6A, 6B, 7A, 7B.
Were the classroom numbers?
Well, that was the grade.
Oh, okay. So they were different levels of the grade. Okay.
Well, no, it was just different kids. If you were an A or a B or a C, you're going to be an A because they assigned them alphabetically. If you were a T, you were in B.
Oh, interesting. Oh.
Didn't think much of it.
So do you have good memories of going to San Lorenzo School?
Yes.
Yeah?
Uh-huh.
Anything in particular that comes to mind?
No, just, it was fine. I remember walking uptown sometimes and having lunch at the R&R Cafe. But other than that, no, nothing earth-shattering.
Do you remember who some of the names of some of your teachers?
Mrs. Hill was kindergarten. Second grade, I think, was Mrs. Trine. Third grade was Mrs. Lang. Fourth grade was Mrs. Hardy. She's 6. Fifth grade was Mrs. Lang. Mrs. Lang was third. Anyways, and then the 7th and 8th was Mrs. Wideline and Mrs. Abidjan.
Wow, you have a pretty good memory there. Do you remember who the principal was?
Al Livingston.
Al Livingston. So, how about some of your friends? Do you remember some of your schoolhood friends or childhood friends in school?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you have like some best friends or buddies that you hung out with and walked to school with? And
well, I walked to school with my brother, but as I mentioned before, Frank Baker, who just because of the age split was 1 year behind me. The Meyer twins, Shirley and Sharon. Ann Sylvester, because she lived across the street. Adrienne Leas lived on the corner. Joanne Mazzini.
I recognize some of those names. Interesting. Okay, so see, born in 1940, so then you had went through 8th grade. So what year did you enter King City High School?
1953.
1953. And you were there for 4 years, so 1957
Yes.
you graduated? What kind of memories do you have of King City High School?
Oh, I remember the different teachers. I can remember the different classes. Going with the football team and the basketball team on all their trips. I was the quote-unquote water boy for football. But basically I was the manager. I kept scorebooks for basketball, but I traveled to all the games. Track with Mr. Dickey.
Oh.
Here again, I kept some of the records and stuff.
I think you mentioned to me that you lived across the street from the high school. Is that
Yes.
right? And what was the address there?
124 North Mildred.
So it didn't take you long to walk to school, huh?
No, you could do it in 5 minutes if you moved real out fast.
So if the bell rang, you could get there before
Yeah, the 5 minutes between the first bell and the tardy bell. If you really moved, you could sneak in.
And was that when the tennis courts were across the street?
Yes.
Were you a tennis player?
No.
No, but there were tennis courts there. The auditorium was obviously there because it was
Yes.
built in '39.
Right.
And then the old school was there probably before they tore down.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
They kept the FAR buildings. I think the shop and the ag building are still there. But all the ones, the main building with the office and the study hall and some classrooms, and then you had, and biology, I was in that main building, and then you they were connected overhead, and then you went to the next building. Yeah.
So were there some advantages to living close to the school?
Oh yeah, go home for lunch.
Okay, so you graduated in '57,
Yes,
and then what?
I went to college.
All right, so after high school, you went to college where?
UC Berkeley.
And what were you studying at UC Berkeley?
I started out in engineering, lasted one semester, and figured that wasn't for me, and then I transferred to basically a business major.
So you were there for
4 years.
4 years. And were there other young people from King City who were at Berkeley at the same time?
Craig Campbell. There's a gal in my class, but I can't remember her name.
Mm-hmm. Was it your intention to come back to King City after you graduated, or?
I had no intention. I mean, I did not have any plan. I mean, I didn't think about it either way. I just move on and see what develops.
Uh-huh. And after that, you went off to
The Army
The
for 2
Army?
years.
Army for 2 years. And then you had to make a decision about where to go.
Stay in or come back to King City. I think by then I had pretty much decided I was coming back to King City. And so I went to work with my father in the insurance agency.
So tell me a little bit about the insurance agency. Your dad came to work there in
1940.
1940. And where was that located, his office?
222 Broadway.
222 Broadway. You remember going there as a child?
Oh, yes.
What do you remember about that building and the business? Was it called Tavernetti Insurance?
No, it was called Pettit Lands.
Pettit Lands, okay. Because Jim Pettit was his partner?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, he just worked for Pettit
Yes.
Lands, okay.
They became partners later.
Okay. What kind of a building was 222 Broadway? Was it like a concrete building or a wooden building?
I think it was concrete. It was, and I believe it was 2-story.
Kind of in the middle of the block?
Yes, very close to the middle.
Did you tell me it was across from the Real Joy Theater?
Yes.
Okay. Was your dad involved in things in town? Was he active and
Oh yeah, Rotary,
okay?
the Masonic Lodge,
Okay.
City Council, and he was mayor.
Oh, he was a mayor too. That's
Yes.
right. Do you remember him talking about, like, would he come home and talk about his experience as mayor at the dinner table and what was going on? No? No? That was just something he did.
Yeah. No, we didn't talk city politics at home.
Your mom, what was her name?
Helen?
And was she involved in things in the community?
Yes, but, you know, she had a card club, and Rebecca's, that's about it.
Rebecca's was an organization. Is Rebecca's with the
Isn't it the...
Oddfellows? Or
yes.
Okay. The Women's Auxiliary of the Oddfellows? Huh?
That was my understanding. I wouldn't vouch for it if under oath.
So your dad worked for Pettit Lands, and then that was on the 200 block of Broadway, and then later they moved to
The
300 block. And what do you remember the address there? Of course you do.
333 Broadway.
From 222 to 333, huh? Okay, that's easy to remember. And that was on the corner of Broadway and Vanderhurst on the southeast corner.
Yes.
And what do you remember about that move? About when did they move there?
Oh boy. About 1953, 54,
Okay.
in that range.
Okay. And that's a kind of an interesting building. I know we talked about it. I can show this picture. Here is a really old picture of this building when it was the King City Hotel. This was quite a bit before your father moved in there, but what do you remember about that building?
Well, upstairs was the hotel. Originally, it occupied the downstairs too, but then I'm not sure how they made the change, but upstairs was the hotel. This was our office. Here's the stairs, and somewhere in here, right there, Harry Casey. That's Harry's father. Ran the auto parts store.
Okay, the Western Auto.
Yeah. That's Sprouse Ritz. This was Purity.
Market.
Yeah. That was the New System Cleaners,
Okay.
which, as I told you earlier, burned down.
Okay.
This was Walter Payne's garage, and Bank of America was on the corner. And you're right, I think the phone company might have been in there at one time.
Right.
And then when they moved around to what was at that time the post office, there was Hardy's stationery store, and there might have been something else, I don't remember.
So the 333 Broadway was originally a hotel. Isn't that interesting? And then how many years did you, well, it's still Tavernetti, Leyes, and Clark.
Yes.
TLC Insurance, but how many years did you work there?
From 1961 until about 12 years ago, 12, 13.
Okay, so this is 2019, so you retired, when did we decide that was? About 2006?
That's about right.
2006, so that's a long time to be in one place.
About 43 years. I think.
Okay, 43 years. What I'd like to do, if you can picture this in your mind, I'd like to just kind of walk you down Broadway and see if we can talk about what you remember starting from the railroad tracks. So if we were getting off the train, well, first of all, did you ever ride the train?
To Salinas a few times.
Really?
Yeah, just my father would drive. My grandmother and grandfather Tavernetti lived in Salinas, and just to put my brother and I on a train, mother and the two of us would ride up, and my father would drive up, and I don't remember how we got from the train station to 150 Willow Street, but we did.
Uh-huh. Do you remember that as a good experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was fun to ride the train.
They're trying to get the train to stop in King City again, because it's been a long time since it has stopped in King City. Just goes right by and nobody can get on.
Well,
So.
the station's gone. I mean, the station was there. They had quite a freight office and a station master that was inside that where you, that is no more.
Well, if they can get they have a grant to do some planning to build a landing there to get the train to stop. So we're working on that. The city council is.
Are you talking about the Streamliner?
The Coast Starlight?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
So, okay, so if you were walking down Broadway, which Broadway was Highway 101 in King City for a lot of the years while you were there. So you get off, what do you remember about that first block, the El Camino Hotel? And
Oh, that's the north side of the street. Then there was a garage, might have been a Ford dealer. And then toward the end, Chet Copley ran it. There was a bar in there that I think Papantelis had.
Okay.
Black Cat was on the corner.
And Black Cat was a bar?
Oh, yes. Across the street, that's the 200 block, there was Carl's Market in there someplace.
Okay, so if you keep going west, Carl's Market, okay.
J.C. Penney. Farmers Mercantile was in between. There was the stables, delivery stables, Bolton's Jewelry Store. Am I missing a block?
No, you're good. You're on the 200 block on the north side.
Okay. There was a restaurant, not City Cafe. I don't remember what the name was, but they had a restaurant. And then Monterey County Bank. Across the street was ADH on the corner. Actually it was Branstedter's Pharmacy to start with. Freeman's Store. Tony Berriant's barber shop, and there was a beauty shop next to it, I think. And then the hotel.
The Vendome?
Vendome.
Okay.
And then it was Sook's to start with, and then Kiefer's. Then Dr. Brummel, the little building that Dr. Winslow had. and the service station.
Do you remember, was it a Chevron or a Standard or
No.
something else? Richfield?
No, Richfield was across the street.
Ah, where the library is, huh?
Yes. No. Yes, libraries in, I was going to say Bank of America. But
It's changed, huh? Everything's changed. Bank of America, yeah. Okay, do you remember Dr. Brummel?
I knew him when excuse me, I knew him when I saw him. But as far as knowing him personally, no.
No. Yeah, we've heard
He
that
was old then.
Yes, he was quite a fixture in town for a long time.
And then pretty early on, Dr. Winslow put his optical business there.
That's right, he moved into that. And what about going back to the 200 block? What about the stable? Do you remember the livestock stable on the 200 block of Broadway?
I remember there was a stable. I don't remember much livestock being in it. In fact,
I didn't mean I'm livery. I didn't mean livestock. I meant livery stable.
I don't know that it was used. The yellow cab was in there at one time.
Oh.
In the little office up front. I don't remember the stables being used for anything.
That was before your time.
Before
probably.
my time.
The horses were more popular back around the turn of the century, I think. But you remember the Black Cat, huh? There were a few saloons in King City.
Oh, yeah. In the 200 block, I think 100 block, well, there were 3 with the El Camino Hotel. And in the next, that's it, coming down Main Street until you got to Sook's or Keefer's. And that's the end of bars on Broadway on that side of the street. I'm not sure there were any bars on the south side of Broadway. Oh, Pootsie's.
Yeah, Pootsie's. Well, let's go over to the south side. If you started at the corner, what do you remember?
There was Gill's Fountain. Now this is down. There was a service station where you made the curve on the freeway.
The curve, yeah.
And then Gill's Fountain, Escona's Furniture Store, the bus stop, and the bus went down Bassett Street and turned to come in. Oh, the theater's in there, Real Joy.
Oh, that would be the next block?
No, that was the 200 block.
Yeah.
And then City Cafe, which was run by a Chinese person at that time. And then the Chevron station with the map painted on the wall.
Do you know who painted that map or how that was there?
No.
That was kind of a fixture, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. You mentioned King City and people would say, oh yeah, they have a map on the wall at the station. It would actually have been the wall of City Cafe.
Yeah, I'm thinking we need to get that map back.
Is it covered up or painted?
It's covered up, but we could make a new one that was kind of like it. Now that you're mentioning that people knew King City for that, I think that was
and then across the street was we've done that.
Vanguard. Yeah,
No, Bank of America.
Right, okay, Bank of America.
And then
It later became Vanguard Agency.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And the telephone company.
Okay.
And a guy named Hardy had a stationary type store.
Okay.
Walter Payne's Garage, and later became Try's. And the New System Cleaners, Purity, the Dime Store, and I guess the hotel.
In your building, yeah. Okay. So people lived upstairs the whole time you were.
Well, it
you
was
had
a
your business there?
hotel. I don't know if they lived there permanently. I mean, it's apartments now.
Apartments now, okay. And then across the street was a big garage.
Yeah, Johnson Motors.
Johnson Motors.
And the little old lady where you always got your sheet music lived up on Vanderhurst, up by Brum's, I think.
Was it called the Melody Shop?
Yeah, that could be it. Yes. We used to say my lady. Just and yeah, it was kind of cluttered inside, to say the least.
An experience to go in, huh?
Yes. Then there was Jacobson's garage, Sandy Jacobson's father.
What kind of a garage was that?
Cadillac, Oldsmobile, I guess,
Okay.
and pickups of some kind.
All right.
Then there was the Masonic building,
Yes.
which is owned by the lodge upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say downstairs was an auto parts store.
Okay.
And then there's the building where the Sprouse Ritz moved to. And then there was the cleaners and dry cleaners and laundry.
Mm-hmm. Well, your recollection kind of matches some of the photos that I've seen of King City
Yeah.
in that era. So that's kind of the historic district of King City,
Okay.
those 4 blocks. So.
Yeah, because the next block starts getting down to where the hospital was, and mostly houses, and the tire shop was in there someplace. And then you're right, when I was young, that was about it. The Silver Saddle came later, but that might have been in the mid-50s. The Palm Motel wasn't across the street. Oh, then there was the Arco, except it was Richfield then, station on the corner across from what ultimately became the Silver Saddle Motel. Across the street where the palm tree still is was Mrs. Campbell. Because I can remember summer nights when Sue and I and some others were working at Ann's Drive-In. We'd come back and then sit out in their porch and watch the world go by, because it was the highway.
Uh-huh.
And then there was the motel. I can't remember the name.
So when you do you remember most of those motels? The Silver Saddle, the Sage, the Palm.
Yes.
You remember them all being built and
Yes.
okay. So that you think that was in the 50s?
No. Silver Saddle could have been built in the 50s. I think Danny Hayes bought the house on the corner from Mrs. Campbell. Mm-hmm. And then he moved it up to where it stayed even today.
Right.
And then they built the Palm.
So maybe the 60s?
I left King City in 1958. 57. 1957. I don't think it was there yet.
Okay.
The Silver Saddle was, but I don't think the Palm was.
Somebody told me that after World War II, when a lot of the soldiers came back and started having families and more of them had cars and they did more traveling, that's when kind of the motels started to come into being.
That makes sense.
I want to research the dates on those to find out when they were.
Well, the building department will have that. They should have
yeah.
historical.
What about the cemetery? Do you remember the cemetery?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Always been there.
Yeah. And anything else? The river? Did you ever spend much time down by the river or on the
No.
bridge or no? Yeah.
No, in fact, the cemetery on the north side, I think, was at that point the last thing.
The end of town.
And it was across from Hearn's Warehouse,
Okay.
which is there as far back as I can remember.
So you mentioned you and Sue. Sue ended up being your wife. Can you tell us a little bit about her and how you met? And
We met at a Christmas party. Jim and Murray Pettit, where Mrs. Campbell was, Jim and Murray Pettit lived in that house for a long time till they built the house on Division. And Sonia was in a year ahead of Sue, but they had been friends because they both grew up on Copley Street. And Jim was a year ahead of me. So actually Sue would have been in the same class as Jim, class of 56. Sonia would have been class of 55.
so Sonia was a Pettit.
Yeah, two
And-
T's.
Okay, and then Sue, what was her last name?
Jacomatzi.
Jacomancy. So you went to school together?
Yes.
Okay, and then you met through Jim and Murray Pettit?
Well, yeah, at that Christmas party,
Okay.
I guess they just needed a date for, I don't even remember the exactly reason. I just, they were my neighbors and in part of the neighborhood kids, and they just said, we're having a Christmas party. I mean, this is about 1954. And, come down, and I did, and Sue was there. And then we'd see each other at high school. We started, casually dating.
And so you were married when?
June 6th, 1964,
Okay.
on D-Day.
Really?
My wife always told everybody that we got married because I like World War II history. I wouldn't forget D-Day.
So you wouldn't forget your anniversary?
No.
Okay, and then you went on to have some children.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your children?
3 girls.
Okay. And their names?
Mary,
Okay.
then Ann with no E,
Okay.
and Sarah with an H.
All right. And did all 3 girls go to King City schools and graduate?
Yes.
Okay. So they're all King City High School graduates. Okay. Okay, should we take a break? Yeah, let's take a break.
Okay.
Okay, David, I have a couple more questions for you. I want to talk just a little bit about what you remember about your time that you served on the city council in King City. So, do you remember what years that was?
I want to say 1972 to 1980.
Okay. So, had you always been interested in politics, or just was something that you decided to try?
Well, I wouldn't say I was always interested in it. It was just something that you did when you lived in the community. I mean, you stepped up and, there was myself and Don Bates, Ed Morga, Miriam Pope, Jerry Doyle. And then the second term, I don't think Jerry ran. I don't remember. But it was just, you did it.
And so were there meetings once a month or twice a month? Or
At least we met on Tuesdays, I believe.
That's what they meet now.
Yeah. And I guess it was once a month if we didn't have special meetings. Okay.
And then who was the city manager, and do you remember some of the city staff that was there?
Well, Lee Yarborough was there for most of it.
Okay.
I want to say Wally Berry was in there for a while.
Okay.
And Marge Serena was there for a long time.
She was a fixture there, wasn't
Yes.
she? So
And
nice
of course,
lady.
at that time, I think the courthouse, no, I guess not, because that was the council chambers. So it moved down to the county building somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember some of the things that happened during those 8 years that you, well, for some of those years you were mayor, correct?
Yes, the last 4.
Okay. And do you remember some of the construction projects or changes?
The new firehouse and the new police department. The firehouse, before that, was just the garage at City Hall. On the back right side on Bassett Street, I think there was double door garages, 2 garages, and that was the fire trucks. And then we built the firehouse across the street. Police department was on North 3rd Street next to Tynan Lumbers behind the bank. And then we built the one that's there now. Those were the 2 major projects. We worked on the sewer in there someplace. Someplace in there we did a big upgrade of the sewer, which I understand they're going to have to, you know, it's been 60 years. It's
It needs to be
time
happen
they
again.
upgraded
Huh?
it, yes. Yeah, those, I can't remember anything else.
They still use those council chambers, and
Oh,
they still
yes.
use the police department and the fire department, so those were pretty important contributions.
Yes, the library's always been there.
Well, the
Yep.
library was in the
Oh, yeah.
the city hall at that time,
As
but
far
then,
back as I can remember.
but now it's moved over to where Bank America was
Yes.
in that building. So
Yes,
yeah.
that was the Richfield station on that corner.
Did the city own both those pieces of property, the one where the fire department and the police department were situated? Is that why they put them there? Do you remember?
I don't think we owned them.
Okay.
No, I'm almost positive we didn't own the police department. Seems to me there were little rental houses or something there. Across the street was, of course, the skating rink and the Catholic church on the corner. But by the time I was on the council, it had moved. And
The Catholic Church had moved
yeah,
to 3rd Street?
Yeah, and AT&T, well, Pacific Bell
Right, was there on Russ
took
and
over that
Bassett,
corner, and it's still there, I understand.
So what do you remember about the skating rink?
It was noisy. I never was a good skater, but it was a place to have parties. Somebody'd have a birthday party, and they'd have it at the skating rink. I don't think it had a kitchen, but here again, don't hold me to that. I just remember going there for functions. I was not an everyday type skater.
So just down the street then from City Hall was St. Mark's, and I think you've been a member of St. Mark's Church for a lot of years, is that right?
All my life.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
I started going as an acolyte when I was 5, just about the time I started school. And as I've explained, Jim Pettit and my father were first cousins. He had 2 kids, Nancy and Tom. Nancy was older. In fact, she graduated from high school the same year I graduated from elementary school, but Tom was just a year ahead of me. And the families socially were close. Spent a lot of time out on the hill. They lived on the hilltop in Pine Canyon or at our house. And they were going to Sunday school. So they talked Leonard and I into going. So they'd pick us up and we'd go to Sunday school. And eventually my folks just decided to start coming to church too.
So St. Mark's is the oldest church in King City.
Yes, I believe
Built
so.
way before the turn of the century. Charles
Yes.
King, who laid out the town, gave 3 lots to different churches. One was St. Mark's, one was the Baptist Church, and one was the Catholic Church, all on Bassett Street.
Oh, I didn't know he. Oh, on Bassett Street.
All on Bassett
Yes,
Street.
yes.
And then St. Mark's was the first one to build a building. And so it's a historic church in town. So you and your wife went there, and
Yes.
your daughters went there, and then your wife ended up being a part of the staff.
My wife became an ordained Episcopal deacon. She went back to school, to divinity school, and was ordained, and ran the food cupboard for quite a while, and whatever else they wanted to do. And then she had the church in Halone for 10 years.
Oh, okay. St. Luke's?
St. Luke's, that was her church. And so she ministered to the people of Lockwood and Plato and Halone and that area.
So I think you were telling me that the Episcopal churches in our area were all built by a pastor. I have read that, Reverend McGowan, and then he named them.
Yeah, it was Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
I think that's amazing. I've known those churches all along, but I didn't put that together. So that's very interesting.
Yes. And 3 of them are still operating.
Yes, yes. St. Luke's out in Halone is absolutely beautiful and picturesque and very old, which is very interesting.
Oh yeah, so's the cemetery. You walk through.
Yes.
Yeah.
We walked through the cemetery while the wildflowers were blooming this spring. It was just spectacular.
Yeah.
Such an experience there.
Good.
So you also in King City, you were involved in the Rotary Club. Is that
Yes.
right? What year did you join the Rotary Club?
February of '64.
How do you remember that it was February of 1964?
Well, they got married in June. I mean, I'd come home from the Army, and that was October by the time I got home, and then, went through Christmas and stuff and decided it was time to join the Rotary. My father was in it, and so I just joined.
So it was right after you came back to
Yes,
town.
yeah.
And when did you come back to town?
October of '63.
Okay. And so that's how you remember it was real soon after it. So you've been a member of, do you still attend Rotary meetings?
Yes, I belong up here
Really?
at the Cameron Park Rotary Club.
And were you an officer in King City?
In King City, yes.
You were like the president for a while?
1 year,
Uh-huh.
and I don't remember which year.
Uh-huh.
I think Byron Lynn followed me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So what is it about Rotary that you enjoy or
Well, it's
appreciate?
the contacts, but just the in King City, it's more just social. Being around a lot of other people in King City that are in some kind of business.
So your father, was he in Rotary?
Yes,
And then your father also was on the city council for a while, is that right?
yes,
Do you remember what years your dad was on the city council?
no.
Okay.
And I don't remember whether it was 2 or 3 terms.
Wow.
I just don't remember.
Someday I'd want to do some research to have a list of all the people that were on the city council. I think that would be interesting.
Yeah.
In my spare time, when I have a chance to do that. Okay, so I think that kind of wraps up our general questions for you, but I have one final question, and it's kind of a simple question, but it's, what do you like about King City?
Well, it was a small community. I mean, when I left to go to Berkeley, I don't think we were much over 2,000. Maybe a little more by then. So, I mean, everybody knew everybody. It was relatively close-knit. I liked the location in the bottom of the Salinas Valley. It was just a good place to grow up and and live.
I agree with you.
Oh, yeah, you've stuck around.
I intended to be there for about 3 months and came to work for the newspaper and was getting ready to leave in September. And then Harry Casey offered me a job, and I said, okay, I'll stay for another year. And now it's been 40 years. So
That long? Yeah.
So I think you're right. I agree. There's a lot of good things about it. And the people, and then the location and the beauty that surround it. So
Yes, yeah, it is. It's very scenic around the Salinas Valley, all the agriculture. And I don't know how it is now, but back then you had multiple families that ran, you know, grandparents, parents, kids, or at least parents and kids. And it was surprising, a fair number of them came back, and it was just a good place to live.
all right. Well, we really appreciate the time that you've spent with us, and we encourage you that if you think of other things that you forgot to tell us,
Yes.
to write those down or call us, because we're eager to preserve the stories of King City for future generations. So
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you.